Hey everybody, it's Taylor, the Sheepish Goat. Nice to see you again. So, you know how like I talk about gargoyles all the time in my videos? Okay, look, we're drawing gargoyles today, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm letting you down. Really, I'm letting myself down. I'm drawing for a reason today. So I have saved a lot of my old art. Not all of it. I wish I had all of it, but I have a lot of my old art. And I was looking through some pieces. Okay, let's start here. I had a dream. I've done this a few times throughout my life where I have a dream about like a specific piece of art that I've drawn, then I wake up and then I draw it. And I've done that quite a few times. I had a dream about drawing a piece for gargoyles, and I woke up and I started drawing it, and it was shit. Didn't look at all how I dreamt it was, and that was fine, because it was like a specific angle in my head. No problem. However, that made me go back and look at some of my old art pieces. I have a few videos that I could make on this channel about some old projects that I've made and never finished, and I was thinking about maybe doing one of those for this next video. In looking through those old photos, I found an old photo I had done for gargoyles. Now that piece in specific was done probably about 5 years ago, like 2018, and it was right when I started getting into digital drawing. Right before that, I was doing pencil, and I would ink it either with an actual ink, not brush, quill. Yeah, like you do for like inking lines in an inkwell, or I'd use like manga markers, things like that. And I would ink every piece I did, and I did like hash marks and everything to try to give depth. And I had a specific style at that time. Now, once I got into digital art, I pretty much stopped drawing on paper altogether. But this gargoyles piece was right when I stopped drawing physically. And I thought it would be really interesting to redraw this piece I did for gargoyles because I really enjoyed how it came out originally. I really enjoyed that piece of fan art that I made, and I like the idea of it, but looking back on it, it's crap. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to try to make that same piece again? It would be a good point of comparison to directly show how far my art has come in 5 years. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to be remaking a piece, and I have the original this time, so good on me. We're going to be remaking a piece of artwork that I've made in the past and trying to see if we can make it better today with our new and improved skills. So let's take a look. All right, so before we get into starting the new piece, let's look at the old piece and figure out what we could do better, what we don't like about it anymore. Let's actually think critically here instead of just saying something is shit for the sake of saying that it's shit. So let's put on our thinking caps here, and let's try to figure out what we don't like about this piece, shall we? So first off, looking at this piece, it's funny because I don't think it's fair to say that it's like my best work for even that time period, but that's just me like defending myself weirdly, even though usually I'm more self-critical of myself. So how the color was implied was extremely intentional. I wanted it to be overpainted. I didn't want to be in the lines. I wanted it to be loose. I thought it gave it more energy, and I wanted the colors to be very vibrant. I wanted it to be comic booky. I wanted it to feel poppy. If you've ever seen Jackie Chan Adventures, that TV show, anytime they do the background of the show, and I'll crop something in here, anytime they show the background, they overpaint over the lines all the time, and I've always really, really enjoyed that. That was a deliberate choice with this piece. I haven't decided if I'm going to color in the new one yet, but if I do, I will color it the same way. I won't be super clean and in the lines because that wouldn't be fair to the original piece. Liar. My proportions, specifically on like Goliath's face, how shrunken in it is, not good. He has really no depth to his face, and Jesus, Goliath's face is hard. Every time I draw it differently, and it's I've done it where it's come all right, but it's usually when I try to stick super close to the show, and that's not what my brain wants to do. So we're gonna try to go with some realistic type facial structure.
My body is dismembered from my mind completely, which is pretty average with me, but...
I like the layout. I'm going to do the same layout. I'm going to probably put them in a similar area. The logo is too big. Obviously, we'll shrink that down. But I think the general vibe of the piece, we're going to do the same. I want to give more detail. I think there's some okay detail here with the hash marks, but a lot of them are too even in weight. They don't have enough variety, and I don't think they stand out enough. Overall, I think better form language. I did some stylistic things here that I thought were fun at the time. Like if you look at the swirl on Broadway's chin, he's the blue one. Like that was a thing. For some reason, I got into an idea where I was like, yeah, that's my thing. I'm gonna do this weird swirl. I did it for like a stylized version of like a fingerprint and stuff a few different times. I think I saw it in an anime, probably like Naruto or something. I'm like, yeah, that's my style. Stupid. But other than that, yeah, I think just better proportions, better general anatomy underneath it. I think I didn't have enough tactical know-how at this time to be able to do it in a way that I was really satisfied with. And I think really looking at some of these poses, specifically the ones in question, obviously I said Goliath, it's too shrunken in, but Lex and Broadway, which is the green and the blue one, I think if I really analyzed their facial structure, and if I flipped the image, for example, I think that their eyes aren't on the right planes. They're a little bit off. And even how I did some of like the some of the musculature through the brows on them. Yeah, I think Lexington 2 is the green one. I think he looks a little bit too pug-like. They all have a distinct look, but he's a little bit too pug-like. So yeah, overall, and Elisa, she's the woman, obviously. She's another one I really struggle with. I've done another piece on the channel where I drew Demona and Elisa. Check it out. It's currently above me right now. But check it out if you haven't, because I actually really liked how both of those came out. But we're going to try to do it again. We're going to try to do it a little bit different. That was an okay try, but that's probably been at least a year since I've done those two. And I haven't drawn any of these guys outside of that in quite a long time. So all this to say, I won't be drawing gargoyles a lot, but for the sake of this video, that's what we're doing. But yeah, I think in general, just better form language, better line weight variety. I could probably tweak the scaling of some of these heads a little bit more, maybe a little bit more separation between Elisa and Goliath compared to the others, lift it up a little, shrink the logo a little bit, some layout things, but overall, yeah, otherwise it's just redrawing it and seeing if we improved. So let's get into it. Yeah, so this started out pretty easy overall. Didn't always go that way for the entirety of the piece, but it started pretty easy. I worked in a kind of poster format because I kind of knew I wanted to be in a poster layout for the end to match the original. And the characters came along pretty quickly. So on one canvas, I did every single character in a different layer. After that was completed, I then reformed them, kind of stretched them to a slightly larger size canvas, so that way I could kind of move them around as needed per the layout of the original. I mentioned the last piece, and I might look slightly different from the original clip of this video. My hair is a little longer. It's been about a week, and we're getting this video done all in due time. Maybe more on that later, but this piece took a little bit of time. I think overall the entirety of the piece took about, I want to say about 50 hours. That's my approximation. I kind of broke it out into a few different files because I didn't know how it would look when I moved the characters around for the layout purposes. So I kind of made duplicates if I need to revert back at any point, and that actually came in handy at one point later down this video that we'll talk about. But yeah, just for starting's sake, I worked on each character at the same time. Well, not at the same time, but like I said, back to back on the same canvas in different layers. And they came together pretty fast for the most part. Matching the original kind of poses for each character was my intention. and that helped. It helped speed things up. I didn't have to think about how they'd be looking. I just kind of mirrored how I originally had it, and I tweaked a little bit if I felt like their pose was off or the angle could be a little bit better to make it more interesting or more dynamic, but that was the original intent. I've said this before, I really like drawing strong female characters, but God, it's always a pain in the ass because trying to balance the strength of the face and the softness, like feminine qualities of the face, can really work against each other, and finding that balance where they don't look too masculine can be really difficult. Elisa in particular was the main challenge of this entire project. We'll again talk more on that later, but yeah, it was the hardest part. Now we're on to Goliath, and I should say, one of the other impotence for drawing this piece was actually finding a few good references of real human faces. Not that I mirrored them precisely, but I started watching The Wire as I started drawing this piece, and yeah, there was a few characters or a few actors in that show that when I saw them had extremely strong jaw lines or cheekbone structures, and I was inspired. I was like, oh, they would be great references for characters. So if you've seen The Wire and you're able to guess who these might be based off, let me know. I guess it's just my style too, because I always start when I draw gargoyles or any characters, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do them really identically to how the cartoon drew them, and then I can't help but try to add more realistic muscle and bone structures underneath, and it shifts away from what I really think I'm going to do, and they always kind of look a similar way, I suppose. Yeah, I guess I won't be able to get away from that. That's just how I draw, but I always find it interesting, especially with Goliath. His face is one of the hardest ones to draw. He just has such strong features. That's another one where you want him to be bestial, but you don't want him to look like he can't be soft. He has to have an intelligence, he has to have a vulnerability and a tenderness, but he has to look very strong and powerful, right? He has to be the leader of the group, but he also has to be the most sympathetic, and yeah. It's a complex task, to say the least, but I'm pretty happy with how he came out overall. Coffee sip. Outside of Elisa, Lex was the hardest one for me to draw. I had a really hard time with getting his facial structure to look right. He was actually, I'll tell you, he was based off Lance Reddick. I looked at Lance Reddick in The Wire, I'm like, holy shit, in my head, he looked like Lex. I was like, that's a great reference point. Which is funny because the personalities don't match, but the bone structure of Lance Reddick is insane, especially in The Wire, where he's very gaunt in places. And I used him as the original reference, and then I deviated, obviously, to make him look more like the character of Lex. But that was when I had to rework a lot, and maybe I'm not entirely happy with the end result of Lex. He's probably my least favorite out of all of these. But outside of Elisa, he was the most difficult part, I think. You know, something else I'll say that's nice about drawing gargoyles, I give myself a lot of shit. Not that really anybody else does, but I like to give myself shit because I'm overly critical and analytical of myself. Because I draw gargoyles relatively a lot, and I truly think I'll take a break from drawing them after this for a minute. But this is my favorite that I've ever drawn them. But I will say that drawing them, because I draw them regularly, it's a really nice change of pace, because anytime I do any other type of fan art, I'm always very referential to the original source material. And with this, I really don't have to be. I know pretty much how they look, and while I looked at my original piece for this, comparative art piece, while I looked at the original that I drew, just for really layout and pose, I didn't have to look up how they look. Like, it's just, like I said, it's embedded in my brain, so I know how it looks, and it makes it so much nicer to feel like you're drawing from like an authentic place versus having to constantly go back to reference material all the time. That sucks, and it really slows down the process, really takes you out of like that focus state where you're really zoned in on what you're doing. So that is one of the reasons I really do like to draw these characters so much, because I've drawn them so much already. So it's kind of like the blueprints are already there. Another thing too, when drawing so many characters, I try to get these videos out weekly, and that's a impossible task for myself. I know that, and again, maybe more on that later. We'll see how I feel at the end of recording this. But for the point of my comment, you'll see me flip back and forth between the characters several times. So maybe it'll look like I stop with a character and then I'm coming back to him, adding more details. So as I go, I'm constantly reforming how far I'm going to take the piece, right? I started this with saying that I didn't think I would color it, that I'd do the coloring the exact same if I did, that I'd keep the layout identically. Those were all lies. I lied to you. Not on purpose, but as I went along, I'm like, no, I'm going to do this for the sake of the piece being the best it can be. So I pushed it further and further and further because I want it to be perfect. But the characters in general, the amount of detail I added to them was kind of restructured every time I did a new character, right? I'd get someone to a point that I really liked, and I had to get the others to the quality that matched that. So if you see me going back and forth to characters, maybe I realize something in the process of making one, and then I use that to go back and kind of restructure the others. So that's why there is so much jumping, and there's a lot of flipping of canvas. I'm sorry if that gets annoying to look at constantly, but that's just me constantly referencing the image in multiple directions. That way I know that it's coming along and looks very balanced and uniform as a piece. So Bronx is one that almost kind of broke my rule for mirroring. I like to use mirroring as a starting point, but I don't like to do it too far because then it looks too symmetrical. It ruins some of the variations that the face will have. It's not going to be identical both ways, but I mirrored him like 3 or 4 times. I did save all of the final details and some reshaping of certain things to do by hand so that it would cause some variation so he wouldn't look 100% mirrored. But I mirrored him way more than I would mirror, I think, most characters, at least what I'm currently thinking I do is my process. Maybe I do it a lot. But I mirrored him way more than I think I traditionally would because he has so many I guess, similar features, right? He's directly straight on, and he's got those wings and the horns, and I wanted those to look fairly similar and proportional, so I did mirror him like 3 times. I'd do one side, then I'd copy and mirror it, then I'd perfect one of those sides, then I'd replace it and flip it over again, so I think it was the best choice to get him to look more uniform, but I did save all the final details of making him. In the final tweaks, I did those by hand eventually. I didn't mirror it any further because I didn't want to still feel like there was variance and he didn't look too identical. I think that's very important. So. All right, solid blacks. Solid black areas in line art is super important, and it's something I don't do enough of. I did push myself to do a lot more dark areas in this piece. Usually I would save those to do them maybe in the coloring stage, or I wouldn't go full black, but I really love how it looks. Usually intimidates me, but with it being digital, realistically, I could always get it back. So I pushed myself to do a few more areas of solid black. If I had a more definitive light source in mind when I was making this, I had a little bit because I knew kind of like the light in the pupils, and I tried to make that match across all the characters, like where the main light would come from. But I did push myself to put more solid blacks in this piece, and yeah, hopefully in the future I'll be even more comfortable to do more and more and more of those because I do think it adds a lot of depth and more visual interest instead of just having, you know, white background with black line art. Having those really, really deep black areas really adds a lot to the depth of the character, so it's a process. All right, so here we're getting on to the layout of the characters. So I put them all on one larger canvas. I started moving them around. I had to scale them a little bit, which I was intimidated by, but I did all of the characters in such a high, a large format to begin with, and a large DPI, so the definition basically of the lines, that I knew I had some variance to skew them around without ruining too much line quality. And I originally was going to do the poses identically to the original image. I found that it really didn't work well, and I was wasting so much space and potential for just a visually interesting layout. It wasn't capitalizing on the characters I made, so thankfully all of their poses led to this new layout, and it worked really well, I think so. But that's why I deviated from the original. I just thought this would look much stronger, be much more interesting, and I could basically rebalance it, right? I didn't want that huge logo in the background, a lot of useless space. This felt like a really good use of all of those characters. So I did deviate from what I said originally, but I felt it added to the final piece, and you know, that's really what it's about. Be damned if I lie to you. Alright, and we're on to coloring. So, starting with flats, nothing crazy here. All the colors I think came out pretty well. I had to struggle, I didn't have to struggle, but I had to play with getting the right saturation values, right? Like I think originally I started really strong. I started messy with the overbleeding colors like I talked about, but again, I just knew it wouldn't be the best it could be if I did that. I liked how I did it the first time in the original piece, and that was intentional. I did that on purpose. With this piece, I knew that it would look better if I didn't do that. I knew it would look better if I toned the colors down a little bit It would still give me a lot of interest. It would still look really poppy based on how I kind of knew I wanted to go. But I wanted to look cleaner. I wanted it to look more like here's busts of each character as opposed to, I don't know, I guess the style of the other piece. I think in the end it just didn't sell enough, and you'll see me tweak these colors, tone them down, reskew them. We add some dark values to everything, right? We give everything a shadow, but then we even go back in and we add secondary colors. We add warm tones to kind of simulate where blood would gather in the cheeks and the forehead and the nose and the chin. To add variance to those colors. We didn't go super hard with the rendering, like we could have pushed it way further. I think Elisa's face by the end gets the most fully rendered to get some smoothed out edges. I don't leave it as harsh as maybe some of the other characters, but again, with her being the human character, she doesn't have quite strong features as all the gargoyle characters do, so I made her look a little bit softer intentionally with the rendering. But yeah, we play with it quite a bit, and then we, eventually add a little bit of lighting. I tried to tone that down this time, but overall, the rendering of this came out pretty well. It went pretty fast. The colors I knew I was going to use worked pretty well. Like I said, I just had to play with the saturation values, and because these characters again have such strong features, have deep cheeks, gaunt areas, it's all about balance, so they don't look too harsh. That's really what it comes down to. I just can't get that damn face to look right. I can't do it. All right, so this is where it came super handy that I made a secondary image, right? I made 2 files of the original line art. I struggled with this Elisa face so much. Once I started skewing it, I knew it didn't look right once I applied the color. It wasn't balanced correctly. I could tell that. And I do this a lot when I color. It helps me reform how the face looks in my head, 3D wise. And I know that the line art's wrong. So I knew the line art was wrong. I tried to tweak it on this piece. I could not get it, and I got too far away from the original where I couldn't get back. So I went to the original line art of everything before I colored it, reworked that face with some subtle tweaks, and that saved the day. Then I just put that back into this piece and readjusted the colors on her face, and thank God for that, because the deviation of reworking Elisa's face was at least another day, if not a day and a half, at least a whole day trying to get this piece, and I got so frustrated because I couldn't get her damn face right, and I spent so much time on it. That's what really drug this piece down, and I'm glad I gave myself time to work through it. I'm mad that I spent so much time trying to get it perfect, but make backup copies so you can revert back later, because you can only go back so far to some extent. So I'm so glad I did that because it really saved the day and I didn't have to just keep changing it, but it was a struggle. It was a struggle for real, so good times. All right, now we have her in the final mix here. We have most of the colors applied. We're just doing all the final details, right? We're doing the final renders. We're adding those warm tones to the skin. We're adding highlights. We decided to have the yellow circle for the background. I thought it would be emblematic of the clock tower that they kind of live in. I didn't put numbers or anything like that, but I thought those would get lost, and I also thought that the visual reference to it was enough where it wouldn't get too cluttered with trying to put numbers. But we give it a little bit of a glow, make it look nice. I think I have a tendency of doing too much glow or light blur, I guess. Yeah, let's go with that. I do too much bloom. Bloom's the word sometimes. It's hard for me to balance that, so I threw some of it in here and then I really worked it back, and I'm really happy with the end result. I don't think I did too much, but I did enough where it still helped the piece pop. So yeah, let's finish it out. There we go. That's the final piece. I really hope you enjoy it. I am really, really happy with how the final piece came out. I think overall, just for the amount of detail, how these characters kind of realize themselves because they're the best that I've ever drawn them. The scalability, if I actually wanted to make this a poster, I could. The detail holds up at a very close, zoomed in scale. There's a lot of things about this that I really, really enjoy, and I am really happy that I made it. I draw gargoyles a lot and I give myself shit, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope you realize that this piece isn't wholly about gargoyles, it's about the original piece as well, so I hope seeing both of those on screen is kind of cool to show what can happen in 5 years' time. That is a 5-year gap. Which is kind of crazy to think about. That's only 5 years for me. It's cool to see where I've come. It's cool to see, I guess, where I'm going. I'm really hard on myself a lot of the time and pretty critical. I never think that I'm good enough or deserving. And I've had conversations like that on this channel before. So it's reassuring to see that there is progress and I should take it easy sometimes. As may be evident if you watch my channel regularly, I usually post on Tuesdays, and I've had a video about that before, so we're going to have a slight side tangent here. I hope you don't mind, and if you're going to click off, then thanks for watching. I appreciate seeing you, but I usually post on Tuesdays. I've had a tangent before where I've said that I'm not going to hold myself so strictly to that, but realistically, I don't give myself enough time. I give myself breaks and I bend the rules, but I don't usually break the rules for myself. I try to hold myself to a very high standard. And part of me was going to struggle to get this out last Tuesday, and a large part of me knew that was an impossibility. When I work on a piece like this, I spend a long time on it, and it's pretty continuous work. So give yourself a break. It's important. I was throwing myself into a rut for this one because, as I've said before, I really love making these videos. I really love making art, and doing something like this professionally that could provide me a source of income and stability would be amazing. It would be the best thing in the world. And this isn't a woe is me or a sob story. This is simply to say the fact that I put a lot of pressure on myself because of that. I feel like I need to deliver. I feel like I need to provide a product that is impressive to other people, that is worthy of, I guess, views, which is such a disgusting thing to think about, but that's what your brain does once you put yourself into the sphere of social media that I absolutely hate. I'm not a social media person, but I love sharing my work now, or at least I love the idea of sharing my work. It helps me get out of my own ruts where I don't like to share anything about myself. So I guess the point of this is to say that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I've been feeling overwhelmed with the mental success rate that I feel like I am or am not having. You always wish things would go faster, and because of that, you feel like you need to do more work and make it better and faster. And if you've ever seen the triangle of quality, I suppose it is, where we have cost versus time versus the quality of the material you're producing. I have no cost to throw into this. It's just me. So when we're only dealing with time and an implied idea of quality, if I try to rush things too quickly, it's going to be shit. Because I can't throw money at it to make it better, because it's just me making it. So give yourself time to make things. Realize that long term you will improve. You will get better because you do care. If you're putting effort into something, you do care, and things will improve. And it's important to look back at these, milestones. Look back at your old work. Look back at the jobs you've had, the relationships you've had. Look back at your life and think about where you've come, because it's hard once you're in the middle of it to realize where you're at and if things are good. And it's difficult sometimes. It really is. I'm in a funky state right now. This video almost didn't come out in this capacity, and I guess I'm getting a little bit introspective here, but I almost made a whole video and kind of blew over this art piece just to kind of talk about how I'm feeling. I've decided to combine them both, but I wanted to share the final note of I was feeling stressed, I was feeling kind of defeated, I was feeling kind of depressed again, and I threw myself into, random YouTube series. I took like a break or two from this when I knew this wouldn't come out on Tuesday, and I did my typical, detach from reality and just binge something because I felt like I needed to. In the middle of doing that, there was a video that came up that they referenced in this series, and it made me laugh. So I went and checked out the original. If you've never seen Winnebago Man on YouTube, please check it out.
The Winnebago Concepts and Engineering Departments have developed a multifunctional bathroom. Privacy, I don't know what the fuck I'm reading.
I wonder what the fuck the real dialogue is.
Listen, I've got to give a clue here now. I don't want any more bullshit anytime during the day from anyone. That includes me. It's going to be very hot. It's going to be very uncomfortable for everybody. Want anybody yelling? We get anybody yelling around here anymore today, and then the shit is going to hit the fan.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Why don't I say it fucking right? I got to read it again because my mind is just a piece of shit this morning.
Is going to be very helpful in keeping you from falling down, you big dumb son of a bitch.
I watched that and I laughed, and that's so important, guys. I can't stress enough how important it is to laugh, because if you're in a state where you feel depressed, if you feel defeated, if you feel like you're drowning and there's a couch on your chest, if you just have a minute to laugh, it does wonders. It immediately broke me out of my funk. And while it's not gone, it gave me the levity I needed to feel okay. and to get things finished, to finish this drawing, to make this video the way that I wanted to make it, and hopefully to share a message that matters. So I do hope you liked the video. I do hope you liked the drawing. But more importantly, I hope it was interesting. And I hope if my video didn't, I hope that today you just remember to laugh, because that's so, so valuable. And if I can share anything with this video, that's all I care about, is go watch something that makes you laugh, that makes you happy, because it means the world. So with that, we'll end the video. I'll be back soon, maybe Tuesday. I don't know. But I hope so. But yeah, until next time. See you then. Bye, everybody.
Let us get the fuck out of here. You believe any of that shit?